Hey everybody, I'm Lane. I am head of research at Near Foundation. Super excited to meet you guys, share a little bit about what we're up to, working at the intersection of blockchain, obviously, AI, and DePIN as well, some decentralized physical stuff as well. So let's jump in. Go to the next slide. I am showing my age here. I've been doing technology for about 30 years. I've been in this industry for 8 years, going on 9 years. My first full-time role was as an Ethereum core developer with the Ethereum Foundation back in the day. I then spent about 5-6 years building a layer 1 blockchain called Spacemesh, and I joined the Near Foundation as head of research, as I said, just last year, quite recently. I want to add that the thing that first excited me about this space was not so much the financial side of things, it wasn't so much the technology, it was more kind of the social side of things, and that's still what gets me excited today. I've always thought of blockchain, cryptocurrency, smart contracts, mechanism design, these tools we have as kind of like a really powerful toolbox that we can use to build better human institutions. That's kind of what motivates me. That's why I'm excited to be here. And I'm extra excited now because we have a new tool in the toolbox, which is AI. And so I want to talk a little bit about kind of how we're conceiving of using that in serving the mission of building better human institutions and the kind of customers that we're serving with that mission. So for anyone who's not familiar with Near, Near is a very large, very active layer 1 ecosystem that has all the bells and whistles of any kind of layer 1 blockchain, the smart contracts, things like that, but is really hyper-focused on empowering developers to build great applications, usable applications, and especially AI applications that work on-chain, off-chain, and kind of seamlessly connect those two. Actually, people who do know Near often are not aware that Near started in 2017 as an AI project, actually. The co-founders, Ilya and Alex, were trying to build what we would now call vibe coding tools, though they were a little bit too early, and kind of detoured to build blockchain infrastructure instead. And they kind of expected, oh, it'll take 6 months, we'll build a really hyper-scalable blockchain, and then we'll go back to AI. So the 6 months turned into 6 years. Well, we've come full circle. We're now back to kind of the original AI vision. Ilya is really well known for being the co-author of the Attention is All You Need paper out of Google Research that kicked off the whole transformer revolution. That's the T in ChatGPT. So we're really lucky to have Ilya at the helm. I can't imagine a better leader to help us kind of bring this decentralized crypto AI vision to fruition. I think the thing that differentiates Near from the kind of AI, decentralized AI perspective is the understanding that you need a lot of different interlocking pieces to get this to work, right? It's not as simple as just building decentralized AI. So this is just a quick visual of what those pieces are, but in slightly more detail, you need a sharded blockchain, right? Why? Because you need many, many, many transactions per second. You need a lot of throughput, and we've increased the throughput of the Near chain something like 200% in the past year by turning on more shards, which is now a very easy process. And 1 million transactions per second is really within reach, which I think very few layer 1 blockchains can say credibly. Chain abstraction allows you to use a single Near account, a single set of keys, basically, to control accounts across many blockchains, right? And I know this inevitably sounds like I'm up here to shill Near, but what I'm actually trying to do is explain why we need all these different pieces to get decentralized AI applications working. We want our AI agents to be able to do things on our behalf around the world, right? Different contexts, different chains, things like that. And so chain abstraction enables that. Near intents, very, very closely related here, right? You want to be able to create intents and have solvers come and fill those intents and kind of do things for you, whether it's moving assets, swapping assets to a different chain, whether it's buying a product for you on Amazon or booking a flight. Intents kind of fills that gap. Near AI is obviously one of the most important verticals. I'll talk more about the infrastructure that we're building and why it matters. And interesting one, House of Stake, this is our decentralized governance initiative. It's a DAO, basically, that we're in the process of launching. I think this is also very important to point out, right, that you also need good governance when you're going to build things like decentralized AI infrastructure, and I'll come back in a moment to why that's important. Finally, we've realized very recently that you also need a product mindset, and I think that this is something that has been lacking in Near, quite honestly, in the past, and also in the industry. You really need to take the time to understand your customers and make sure you're building something that satisfies their needs, right? You need to understand their needs, their preferences, the amount they're willing to pay for products with different features, it's just a thing. It's a thing that crypto has not done really well in the past. We've been really, really good at chasing shiny technology and building infrastructure, but not so much productizing it. And when you're building a product, one of the most basic things you have to do is what's called customer segmentation, right? You have to understand the personas of your customers in the market and what their needs are, what their preferences are. And actually, that's what I'm going to do with the second half of this talk. So as I was kind of putting this together, I was reflecting on the state of crypto AI and feeling, to be honest, pretty depressed about it. Just feeling like we're not doing a good job. We're not actually competing very well with kind of the centralized AI products out there. Very few people are using these things today. And I realized that the reason for this is that we're basing it on an assumption, which is that AI today is monolithic, right? And what I mean by that is when you think of AI, you probably think of something like this, right? I'm sure most of us in the room here are using tools like ChatGPT every day. They're super efficient. They're Web 2 applications, right? They are powered by these enormously powerful data centers on the back end, these $1 billion, $10 billion, soon $100 billion gigawatt data centers that have, enormous bandwidth. So fun fact, the actual interlink among these GPUs in these training centers that X.AI, NVIDIA, et cetera have is on the order of 10 terabits per second. Okay, that's 10,000 times faster than my home internet connection. So the hint here is I don't think crypto is going to compete directly in efficiency or cost, but there are kind of other ways in which we can compete and should compete. That's what I'm going to get to in a second. But again, coming back to kind of the assumption here, we're kind of assuming that AI is great and it's taking over the world and it's making us all more productive and everybody's happy. Everyone is like really well served by the existing products out there. And surprise, surprise, I'm here to tell you it's not exactly that simple. And I think that this is a challenge, but also an opportunity for us as an industry. The other thing I realized is that there are as many different potential AI products or AI use cases as there are people, to be quite frank, right? And this is why AI is not monolithic. Again, I'm dating myself here, but I'm old enough to remember the early days of the internet when there was like just text-based applications. We had like BBS, we had Gopher, we had news groups. Later we had the web, but we had only a single web browser in the beginning. And then over the past 30, 40 years, the internet has, of course, evolved into 1,000 different kind of products, or probably more than 1,000 products. AI is kind of like in the early phases of this right now, right? Where it's still kind of safe to think about it as kind of this chat-based experience. That's whether you're using ChatGPT or you're using a Notion-style app, something like that. But we're on the verge of AI exploding, right? And being anything but monolithic. And we have to consider which users are and are not well served by the products we have today. So this guy is pretty happy right now, right? Who is this guy? He is, like everyone in this room, wealthy by global standards, very technologically savvy, very comfortable using tools we have today, AI tools like ChatGPT today. And he represents a large portion of the market, including a lot of companies as well. There's a lot of enterprises that are relying on the Anthropic, Claude, the ChatGPT, the Gemini, these sorts of applications today. But there are a lot of users out there who are very unhappy. And we know this because we're talking to them every day. One group of people who is unhappy is people who really care about privacy, right? I care a lot about privacy. I consider myself a privacy maximalist. And I really dislike the fact that every time I send a message to ChatGPT, it's going to Sam Altman, and they're holding onto that data, and they can be forced to reveal that data to the government or law enforcement, things like that. So people who care about privacy are unhappy. There's also big verticals, right? Industries such as healthcare, law, finance, right? That are simply unable to use AI products as they exist today because of regulation. They're not allowed to put, protected health information, for example, into these AI systems. And this flag, sorry, I know it's a little bit unclear. This flag is supposed to represent sovereignty, okay? So people who really care about sovereignty also are very unhappy right now because they have no control over the sovereignty of their AI stack, right? The open models only go so far. We don't really know how they were trained, right? And we don't really know what's happening when inference is happening. And this could be a sovereign state. We've spoken to some of those, right? They're looking to build citizen services, but they don't want to use models that they don't control or don't understand. This could be a sovereign actor like a DAO or a network state. It could be a sovereign individual as well. I think that's where the opportunity lies. Why are they unhappy? Costs are very, very high, especially when you start doing a lot of inference. Regulation, right? I mentioned a moment ago, industries like healthcare or finance, they are barred because of things like in the United States HIPAA compliance rules, right? Which say that simply, again, they can't put protected health information into existing systems. So again, I think that these are the market segments we should actually be understanding better and be targeting. So let's get to that fun market segmentation, customer segmentation analysis I talked about a moment ago. So this is kind of, I have an MBA, I went to business school. This is like literally kind of like marketing 101 stuff. It's very basic, but I think that it's something we haven't done well as an industry. But I think that if we lean into this, we will find our superpowers and find the customers that we can serve the best. Also, let me be clear, 3 personas, it's super, super reductionist. There's obviously many more out there, but we only have time to go through a few. So the first one, meet Alex, my friend. I know many Alexes. Alex is a management consultant, travels a lot. He really, really, really cares about efficiency. If it isn't cheaper and faster, it doesn't matter, right? He's literally hired and paid a lot of money by his clients to help them save money and increase efficiency. Alex likes AI tools the way they are because they're fast, they're efficient. When a question arises of like, how do we target this market segment? How do we compete here? I think the answer is we don't try to. I think it'd be a mistake. And I've said this a few times, but it's a mistake that I think we've made at Near, and I think it's a mistake that the industry has made in general by thinking that we can kind of really go head-to-head and compete on things like cost or efficiency. I think we need to compete on other attributes, other things that other groups of users prioritize, okay? So everyone's favorite Cypherpunk, Satoshi, right? He has a very different set of values than Alex. He is much less interested in cost and efficiency. He really cares about privacy, right? He wants complete control, sovereignty, as I said before, over the stack. He wants to know where all of his data is. He wants to have control over it. He wants to run things locally when he can. He wants to look at the code, audit it, verify it. And he's using tools today like Signal Messenger, like Bitcoin, like Zcash, right? Which are a little bit slower and a little bit more expensive than the alternatives, but that's because he values privacy so much. And actually, this group of users is exactly the group that we are targeting today. And I should mention, it's not just cypherpunks who are, I don't know what the percentage is, but there's not that many cypherpunks out there. But it's also the industries I spoke to, right? It's also the financial companies, the healthcare companies, the legal, the law firms, right? And those are huge, right? A back of the envelope calculation suggests it's like $1 trillion market with a T, right? So it's not 80% of the market, it's 5%, 10%, but it's very substantial. And we're able to serve these customers using confidential, verifiable compute. I don't have time to get into all the details here, but in a nutshell, what it means is that when you interact with AI models that are running on this, we call it the Near AI Cloud, so our kind of like hosted, decentralized, secure AI infrastructure, you get a proof of everything, right? And you can actually test it. If you go to chat.near.ai today, you can use an application, a proof of concept, that looks like a ChatGPT, but on the side of the screen, if you're on desktop, I think it's a bit different on mobile, right? Every time you take an action, you get a proof. You get an actual cryptographic proof that you can then take to NVIDIA, take to Intel, right? The companies that produce the hardware, the secure enclaves, and they will tell you that they'll attest to the fact that the compute is private and is verifiable and that nothing has exfiltrated the system, nothing's left the system. So even if you don't control the hardware, you can still have privacy guarantees. So this makes Satoshi very, very happy. But of course, it's going to be a bit slower and a bit more expensive than kind of what the hyperscalers and the OpenAIs of the world have to offer. And I added a third persona here. Her name is Priya. She is a 20-something graduate student who I called a DeSci Nerd, right? So she cares about privacy, but not as much as Satoshi. She is more interested in openness. She is an openness maximalist, right? She believes that information should be open, should be free, knowledge should be freely shared. She really wants open weights, open source, open governance of everything. And she's also very cost sensitive as well because she doesn't have a lot of financial resources, but she feels that people like her should still be able to use powerful AI models. So she's always hacking together grant money and compute credits that are available to her and to students to kind of be able to run her protein simulations for her biomedical research. This is another customer segment that I think is not understood super well and is not super well served today. I think this segment wants to see things like community-driven AI model governance. This is another thing that we're working on at Near, and this is where the governance piece that I spoke to a moment ago, right, one of the 5 pillars comes in. It's very important to users like this that the models not be created and owned by major corporations, right? That they be governed by the community that anyone participating in, for example, DeSci can contribute to, can benefit from. And another benefit of the verifiable nature that I spoke to a moment ago. You can do verifiable inference, as I mentioned. You can also do verifiable model training, although this is still in the research phase, just to be clear. What that means is you can create a model, you can train a model, and get a proof of what it was trained on, right? How it was trained, what data went into it, the number of parameters, things like this. And this matters for someone like Priya and scientists because they want to be able to assert, to prove cryptographically that their research, their life's work is included in this model. And then, why do they care? Because they can be compensated, right? Because then when people perform inference on their own work, again, they have the full chain of custody, the full life cycle here. They have cryptographic proofs of everything. And so, again, this is a little bit of a vision at this stage, but we kind of envision working with DeSci, working with content creators, things like this, scientists, to allow them to begin monetizing their work through things like community-governed models. A lot more to say, but I know I want to respect everyone's time and kind of bring it home. So just to summarize, again, we have these different market segments, and we haven't done a great job of differentiating them up to this point, right? We have the consultant, the Cypherpunk, the DeSci Nerd. To reiterate, I don't think that we have a very strong case to make to Alex and users like him today, and I don't think we should be trying, right? I think we should be doubling down on people who really care about privacy, like the Cypherpunks. We can speak to this today. These tools like the verifiable confidential AI, they're already working, and if you're interested in testing them out, they're all available for free right now on the Near AI cloud, so come grab me, I can help you guys get plugged in. And I think also the DeSci Nerd, right, user demographic, I think we can actually make their lives a lot easier and make them very happy with kind of community governance of models. Yeah, so just to reiterate, right, that is our superpower. Let's not pretend that our superpower is going head-to-head with the superscalers, the hyperscalers. Let's recognize that our superpowers are things like confidentiality, privacy, community governance. This is my contact information. My DMs are open in the usual places like X. Would love to stay in touch. Please feel free to reach out. Thank you guys so much for your time today.